Assistant Vice President at the Office of Global Services at Northeastern University. I also serve as the primary designated school official for our F1 program. With me today is Jigisha Patel, who is our Associate General Counsel and Chief Advisor for Immigration Services at Northeastern University. Welcome, Jigisha.
Thank you, Roopa.
We have some slides and some pieces of both reminders and some compliance updates that we will be sharing with you today. I hope your time permits. I am certainly committed to spending the next 1 hour with you, so we do hope you will stay with us. Along the way, you are welcome to type in your questions in the chat. We are joined by Monica Rodriguez, our business analyst, who will be both advancing the slides and managing the chat function for us. Thank you, Monica, in advance for all the multitasking you are going to do.
Thank you, Roopa. Hello, everybody.
Hi, thank you, Monica. May we please go to the next slide? So we know the basics about OPT. You are students who are either currently on OPT or the STEM extension, or potentially you are students who are looking forward to applying for OPT this fall semester. I also know that we have some advising colleagues in the room. Welcome to those who have been able to take the time and join us. And thank you for the good work that you all do to support our students and our alumni. OGS has a robust page called OPT Central at the OGS website, so I will not be going through the nitty-gritty of how to apply or any of that. Our focus today is to talk about the student's responsibility towards compliance and what does it mean when we talk about reporting on OPT. So you know the basics. When an OPT is approved by USCIS, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, they mail the student the Employment Authorization Document, or the EAD. In casual language, students like to call this the EAD card or the OPT card. This EAD has the start and end dates that USCIS has allowed this individual to have authorized employment in the United States. This EAD is not connected to any employer when a student is on OPT. It is the student's responsibility to find the employer. You know that when there is a STEM extension, that is different, and that is tied to an employer. Please remember, again, the basics. After OPT, a student is able to apply for another program of study. If they do that, the CVIS record is transferred out, and that is the day the OPT ends, even if the EAD has different information. So be thoughtful when you are requesting to transfer the CVIS record out. During the grace period of 60 days after a successful completion of your OPT, you also have the option to depart the United States or apply for another visa status, such as the H-1B. I often hear people talk about the OPT visa. There is no such thing. Please make sure that you remember that you are on F1 while you are on, make sure that you are on OPT. May we have the next slide, please? So while a student is on OPT, first of all, you continue to be ours. Northeastern University manages your CVIS record. The employment or the practical training must be directly related to the field or the program of study from where the student has graduated. It is the student's responsibility to accurately and timely report employment via the SEVP portal. If there is any problem using the SEVP portal, then please use the OPT Central area of your MyOGS portal to submit the e-form. It's called OPT issue reporting. You can let OGS know that there is some challenge with entering your employer information at the SEVP portal, or you are unable to even access the portal, and an OGS advisor can assist you with this functionality. Monica, do we have any questions so far?
Yes, we have plenty of questions.
Ah.
One of the first ones is a student is doing OPT. They're asking if they can work remotely from home in a different state, and will that be an issue for their future H-1B application?
So a great question. Thank you, Monica, and thank you to the individual who posed that question. In the COVID era, you are aware that SEVP is providing guidance every semester. OGS continues to post the most recent guidance at the OGS website, so I strongly encourage you all to stay connected with us that way. And as long as the pandemic continues and SEVP approves remote experiences, those are acceptable. So for spring of 2020, summer of 2020, and fall of 2020, remote employment for OPT has been supported. That has been one of the COVID accommodations that SEVP has allowed. We are expecting guidance for spring 2021 to be released sometime late November, early December. Please again stay in touch with our website, and we will keep you posted on how SEVP provides guidance moving forward. One more question, Monica?
I think this is a timely question. There's some questions about the recording in terms of concerns about both questions that are put in the chat, how those will be used and who will see them, and also about the recording and when that will be available and where.
That's a great point. So to those who are here and the fact that we are recording, please know that when OGS does webinars, first of all, the chat does not show up in the recording. We also do not respond to any individual information. We treat your information as confidential, right? So we ask you, don't put anything confidential in the chat. If there is a specific advising question, that should be addressed to OGS via email, and we will help you directly. For the purpose of the webinar, we talk in broad terms, and we do not talk about anything sensitive. We do not disclose any names. We do not put any students' information out there for public consumption. I hope that answers the questions that have been coming through.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. May we go to the next slide, please? So moving on to those students who are graduates of STEM eligible degrees, please remember that you need to apply for the STEM extension before OPT ends. Start your process early, start talking to the employer, do your research, start gathering your paperwork, and submit your requests to OGS within the timely window. Keep in mind that we process hundreds of these applications on a regular basis. While we understand that for each student, this is your unique case and your unique situation, we do deal with a high volume of these requests. And when a student submits it late, then they begin to get concerned and they begin to start sending us lots of emails and phone calls. Is my paperwork done? Is my paperwork done? My advisors can either answer phones and emails, or they can process your paperwork, right? We are the same people who are doing the work. So please, I implore you to plan and start the process early. It is in your best interests. Kindly report to OGS any material changes to or deviations from an existing Form I-983. That is your responsibility, and that needs to be done as soon as possible. Also, it is your responsibility to notify OGS and submit a new Form I-983 upon change of employer or start of a new practical training opportunity. Your responsibility is to notify us within 10 days. Keep in mind, we also have a reporting obligation, so don't wait till the 10th day to send it to us. If you have the information, please don't wait. Send it our way. Report a change of a student's legal name, residential or mailing address, employer name or address, and or loss of employment or your practical training opportunity to OGS within 10 days. Any non-compliance also needs to be reported to the Department of Homeland Security as soon as possible. Keep in mind that that is a shared responsibility. OGS is responsible for it, you are responsible for it, your employer is responsible for it. So we are, again, offering friendly reminders, and the source for all of this information, I have provided you with the PDF at Study in the States. Save it somewhere, please, and make sure you check for any updates that Homeland Security provides for all concerned. Any questions or comments here?
Hi, Roopa. Yes, we have some questions about the SCVP portal. If, in general, just if you could cover it, how to make the account and how to fill in the employer information. It's probably a little specific, but I think there's some concern about the role of the SCVP portal in general.
So I will be very honest with you. That is a student facing, right? And I'm referring to you as students. You are alumni, I acknowledge that. But that portal is, it faces you. I don't see what you see. So you need to create a login with your password and then follow the prompts for the information that you need to provide. It is all the information related to your employment. When did you start your employment? When did you end the employment? What is the name and address of the employer? With STEM extensions, I know that the E-Verify number is critical as well. So I encourage you to log into the portal and follow the prompts that you are asked to submit information. Other questions, Monica?
I think there's a lot of questions relating to the student's location as compared to their work, especially during the COVID pandemic, where they might be working for an organization in one state and they might be physically located in a different state, and some concerns about how that might relate to their STEM OPT period.
Well, I think, again, to go back to the fact that during COVID, SCVP is considering remote study and work as an acceptable accommodation for students, continuing students with active records. It is your responsibility, again, to maintain documentation, right? If you are working remotely for a company, then keep that documentation effective this date. Have the conversation with your supervisor and make sure that you are recording the start date when you started working remotely, what communications came out from your organization or employer, and then what changes will occur, right? So, for example, at Northeastern, we have just begun the conversation about we will be beginning to have a greater presence on campus. So those kinds of emails you can save as well, right? And then there will be potential communications from employers to say, okay, for myself as an example, Roopa, effective January 1st, 2021, you are required to report to campus every day. I can save that email. So that will be unique to different employees and different companies, and that is material information that I encourage you to retain. Jigisha, here would be a time for me to invite you to help us. Am I forgetting something, or is there some refinement here that you would like to offer?
Yeah, I think I think you covered it. I mean, it's the most important thing is that you are able to keep accurate records and documentation. You know, timelines, any kind of confirmations are always good to keep on hand. I know often, you know, people will submit things to the federal government, and we have to remember that anything that is submitted to USCIS or through the CVIS, you know, system is submitting to the federal government and has to be truthful and accurate. But often people won't retain copies of things that they have done, right? So showing your good faith, your, you know, intentions to do the right thing is really important too.
Thank you, Jigisha. Maybe move to the next slide, please, Monica. So to Jigisha's point, I'd like to draw our attention to some common pitfalls that we want to let everybody know that these are things to keep in mind, and let's try and make every effort to avoid these pitfalls. Engaging in any inappropriate activity, right? Your OPT has very clear expectations. You have very clear guidelines that the OPT or practical training experiential learning should be related to your field of study, and you have starting and ending dates that you are required to adhere to. By the way, at the end of this presentation, I have also provided the volunteer intern toolkit that our Office of the General Counsel created, and it's a really helpful toolkit. We know that in this day and age, jobs are difficult to come by, and we know that for students, you know, there is a lot of aspirations riding on this OPT opportunity. But we want to make sure that you do it right. We want to make sure that you are engaging with the appropriate entities and with the appropriate experiential opportunity. Volunteering is also okay, and the volunteer/intern toolkit is a really helpful tool for you to look at to say, fine, if I'm volunteering, how do I document that? So it's coming at the end of the presentation, and we will post this recording hopefully on our website. I reiterate my pledge to not engage in any sensitive or person-specific communication here. Recently, I learned something new, that there seems to be this scam where students on OPT were they received an outreach through social media, and they were told to pay the so-called employer for some training opportunity. Hey, I've never heard of anybody having to pay their employer, right? So that should be ringing some alarm bells, and that should be telling students that this doesn't sound right. That's a pitfall. That's a scam that I encourage you to think through very carefully before handing out any of your money. I also strongly encourage you to resist the urge to just send out your resume. Again, something I learned was that I didn't even know this was possible, to just send an email out on LinkedIn or to put out the resume on LinkedIn. I would hesitate very much because I know there is information there that could lead to all kinds of concerns, especially contact information. And then you don't know who is reaching out to you, right? In this era of remote work, there is no job interview. There is no physical space where a person is going for a job interview. So be thoughtful about who you are trusting. Be thoughtful about who you are engaging with. We know that, again, there is a lot of aspiration riding on the OPT opportunity, but we really, really caution you about what you put out on the World Wide Web and who you engage with. I'm a huge fan of Dateline, so I have learned lots of lessons from Dateline with other kinds of life issues, and I talk about transference of learning. And I invite you to think about transferring those kinds of learnings, right? We think about online engagement and how that is so unreliable. Think about these social media platforms as being similar pitfalls and possible concerns for you to avoid. Another pitfall to avoid that you could very well do is, looking at the legitimacy of an employer. Again, am I able to track this person? Is there a physical location? What is ringing, setting off alarm bells for me here, right? Let me talk to a few people. Let me put out some feelers. You know that employers can do a reference check on you. You should be doing a reference check on your employer as well. That's a two-way relationship. That's a two-way responsibility. So please accept some friendly reminders here to take care of your own information and opportunities. And to that point is my last bullet. Double check the veracity, right? Double check the truth of any remote opportunities. Jigisha, would you like to add anything to what I have just said?
No, I think you covered it. Yeah, I think it's important to to just be extra careful and make sure that any submissions, any information provided, it is accurate and you feel comfortable with it, and that you keep copies and documentation.
Thank you. Monica, any questions related to what I just said?
One thing I just thought of, Roopa, real quick,
Yes.
and may come up in questions too, but I think what we want to share with people is that there are resources. We do have the Northeastern University, police department as well. So if something, just doesn't seem like you're not sure, it raises a flag. There's many opportunities, right? First of all, always with OGS, contacting OGS, but if it's truly an emergency, we do have experts and professionals that can review and confirm information as well, right? So when we talk about doing your due diligence, being mindful of something that just doesn't quite seem right, or just potentially if there's a concern, you can always reach out and ask for help in confirming, right? Just so that you don't feel that you have to try and resolve this or determine this on your own. And I think that's important, especially right now where people might be more remote. Normally you might have interviews where you're going onto properties of an employer, or you might be engaging with people in person. And as we're remote, some of us are remote right now, that makes it harder to do that due diligence.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jigisha. Thank you. And I think, two things to share here, right? Culturally, international students like to think, or have a tendency to think, I have been doing this for 20 plus years. I think there is a tendency to generalize. My friend, this happened to my friend, so I should assume the same, or my friend did this, so it must be okay. So both those pieces, I strongly encourage you to think twice. And in this remote day and age, I think it is also very easy for you to feel alone. Oh my God, this happened. It must be just me. We will obviously never disclose to you, but let me just assure you that you are not alone. And again, OGS is here to help and support. Monica, questions?
And speaking of scams, there was a question about if a student receives a call stating that OPT is suspended, and the concern about how USCIS or OGS would call students to communicate such information. Like, how would the student know that this is an appropriate call?
Yeah, that's a great point, right? So, and I think it is in my next slide. I think I say something about if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. But if for OGS, honestly, OGS does not call anybody. We are so busy. We respond to phone calls and we will send you emails through Synapses, you should see the OGS header and the signature from OGS. And any emails from OGS will only go to your Northeastern email. We don't email generally. We may CC your personal email, but typically we will send it only to your Northeastern email. We will not call you. And if you have any doubts, ask for a phone number and say, I'll call you back. I also get, my phone typically will tell me potential scam when weird phone numbers call me. I just don't answer. I let it go to voicemail, and then I see if it is something I should call back or not. Hey, listen, if somebody wants to reach you, they will reach you. Don't feel obligated. I was at a school in the Midwest as of last year, and the students on my campus there were getting lots of scam calls saying that it was the police asking them to pay money. Anybody who calls you and asks you to pay money, come on now. If the hair on your back stands up, on the back of your neck stands up, follow your instinct. Check in with OGS, as Jigisha Patel mentioned. Call NUPD and say, listen, I got this call. Can you help me track it? Can you help me think through this? You are not obligated to answer on the spot. You don't have to be rude. You can be polite. You don't have to pick up every phone from everybody who calls you, right? I know culturally international students feel, oh my God, if I don't answer the phone, somebody will get angry with me. No, that's not true. So please use your good judgment. Please make sure that you protect yourself first. Ask questions if you find yourself caught in a phone call. But my strong recommendation to you is let a call go to voicemail and then you follow up. Other questions there, Monica?
There's a question if you could clarify a little bit more about the concern with LinkedIn. Is it just the uploading of a specific contact information, or is there a concern more with that medium?
So again, as I mentioned, this was something I learned. It's not something I have done. But what I learned was that there is a capability for individuals to just send out their resumes to unknown entities, right? Or uploading resumes to websites in the hope that somebody will pick up your resume and offer you a job. So I think the concern is to be thoughtful about what you are putting out there, right? Even if somebody does that, you don't want to put your home address and your phone number and your email address and everything out there, right? If you are doing it, provide one piece of information. But I think it's important to use judgment. I don't think LinkedIn as a whole is something that you should abandon or boycott. I think it's a great professional tool. But when we are sending our information out in cyberspace, we just need to be thoughtful about where am I sending my information? Who is likely to see this? Is this some unknown entity, or is this Procter & Gamble? There's a difference, right? So those are pieces that you need to follow your judgment, and you need to take care of your information and protect yourself. Monica, may we go to the next slide, please? Because I do believe I said something there. I think it's the next slide. Okay, let me go through this and then we'll take a few more questions, or we can circle back to any concerns about scams when we wrap up a few talking points. So I like to think of student responsibilities in terms of do this, don't do that, right? So please do keep track of any unemployment days. You know that unemployment days, you may not exceed an aggregate of 90 days for OPT, and there is an additional 60 days of unemployment permitted if a student will be doing the STEM extension. Details are on the website. Details are at Study in the States. And the Study in the States links are at the end of this presentation for you to do some review and some self-reflection there. Please make sure that you work for or engage in practical training with legitimate employers or organizations. Again, it is the individual's responsibility to do their due diligence and to make sure that any practical training opportunity, any engagement is with a legitimate company or a legitimate organizer. Again, this is the time when talking to friends might be helpful. If friends tell each other and say, okay, there's something not right here, or I saw something on the news, then you know better. So that is certainly, each individual's responsibility. Carefully review and accurately report any required information, whether it is to OGS, whether you are filling out the form I-765. I know there is a lot of nervousness when one is filling out these forms, right? They are forms for the federal government. Take 2 minutes, slow down, make sure you write everything correctly. I know sometimes students are so nervous that they spell their own name wrong, and then they get the EAD with a wrong name spelled there, right? So take a few moments, stop, breathe deeply, make sure you are reading everything when you are filling out these forms and applications and when you are reporting. Also, the 765 I know is an incredibly long form, as is the I-983. I think it can get pretty complex, but it is super important to make sure you understand, you read and you understand before you put your signature, what are you signing? What are you saying? Because these reports go to the federal government and the information needs to be truthful. I cannot emphasize that enough. Please check emails from Northeastern University. We send you updates. Thank you for joining the webinar. We hope this was a result of the email we sent out on Wednesday. Please keep records, as Jigisha Patel mentioned, keep all records of all employment or practical training or volunteer opportunities. Make sure you get whoever is supervising it, you get them to sign off on it. Make sure it's on a company letterhead. Make sure you keep them for your records. And please make sure to submit accurately completed Form I-983 when the STEM extension is involved. Again, that has to be updated, and again, it is the student's responsibility to inform the school whenever there is any material change. Any questions with this, Monica?
No, there are some general questions about concerns about what students are hearing about the duration of status changes and grace period changes and how that might affect OPT. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So we know that there is some anxiety surrounding that. Right now, that is a proposed rule. There will be, the comment period is still open, and then it will have to go through its processes. So we are not going to discuss that at this webinar because it is in proposed status, right? There is no, I always tell my students this, I can't tell you what if, because what if can be any number of things. So for now, I invite you to keep yourself informed. I assure you that Northeastern University is very much a caring and supportive institution and has our commitment to international students. And I invite you to please stay in touch with the news for any future updates on that. At this point, it is a work in progress, so I'm unable to comment on that.
Roopa,
yes, please. Yes.
I was just going to add one thing here, just to let everybody know that has joined today that you know, our website, which we can add as a resource as well, which is the northeastern.edu/executive-orders, does have you know, a good accurate listing of, many of the university's advocacy efforts in support of our international community, and in particular, with some of these harmful proposed rules, we are doing everything we can, working with our government relations office to, advocate on behalf of our community. So just wanted to flag that as well as a good place to find information.
Thank you, Jigisha. Absolutely. Yes, there is so much behind the scenes hard work that goes into supporting our students. May we go to our next slide, please? All right. I cannot emphasize this enough. The must report. Any decision to discontinue optional practical training and leave the United States, we have relevant forms at the OGS website. It is very important to communicate to us. Let me tell you why. When a student informs us, then we can appropriately complete their CVIS record, which means you completed everything you needed to do and you have completed the opportunity, and while we are completing the record, we put remarks to say the student has informed us they are leaving. When a student doesn't inform us, for example, and they just leave the US, the CVIS record at some point will auto-complete. Auto-complete means it was automatically completed by the system. No action was taken by the student or the school. That does not reflect well on the student, right? So we strongly encourage you to report to us so that we can take timely action and complete that record. That is helpful for any future benefits or any future review or any future attempt to re-enter the United States. It makes a difference. Anytime a student changes their status to any other, while they're from F1 to, for example, H1B, kindly let us know. Again, we would verify. Generally, when an H1B is approved, the system will automatically update the information. But sometimes we know it does not happen. Any technology is only as good as the humans who utilize it. So OGS is there to help with those kinds of updates for you. Anytime somebody on OPT or STEM extension wants to begin a new program of study at Northeastern, welcome back. Or you want to transfer to another school in the United States, we need to transfer that CVIS record out. We are here, OGS is here to make sure we take timely action on that CVIS record. So please make sure that you continue to report to us, even if the decision is that you don't want to continue with Northeastern, that's totally fine. We still have a responsibility to you, and you have a responsibility to let us know. Monica, any questions?
Yes, there is some confusion about the unemployment time that's permitted. If you can explain again the 90 plus 60 for the total of 150.
I think there is a video on the OPT Central page, if I'm not mistaken, but here's the basic premise, right? Any student, when they apply for OPT, when you apply and you are waiting, that is not considered unemployment. When the EAD is issued, there is a start date on that EAD. That begins the employment clock. And from that date to the end date of that OPT, a student is allowed to have 90 days of unemployment, which means that they may be waiting to start a job, waiting to find a job. They may start a job and it may end. They may have a few days of interruption in between while they are looking for another job. So it's called an aggregate, right? It means that you can have breaks in employment, and any of that in between time when there is no employment, that is counted as unemployment. Basically, students need to report through the OPT portal to SCVP the starting and ending of any employment and the employment information. When students are in STEM majors, you know that the STEM extension allows them to apply and get another 24 months of OPT. During that time, they have an extra 60 days of, again, this same aggregate of unemployment. So the government understands that the job market fluctuates. The government understands that students may want to move other, employment is something that might change for students who are on OPT, alumni who are on OPT. And so the 90 days are for students, for example, in the arts who only get a 1-year OPT opportunity. They have a possibility of an aggregate of 90 days to be unemployed. And STEM majors who are eligible for STEM extensions are allowed an additional 60 days where they can aggregate unemployment. Other questions, Monica?
A student question is if they have reported everything on the SVP portal, reported to OGS, everything that they believe they've done correctly, how can they be sure? How can they check that their visa status is okay?
So I think part of it is we can double check. Monica and Shannon is in the room. I don't know, Shannon can chat me and tell me when there is a reporting, whether we acknowledge that we have received it. Typically, I know when students submit any e-forms to OGS, there is an acknowledgement that comes through. So that is something that you can rely on. Other pieces, when you are sending through the SCVP portal, I know it goes into, I think, cyberspace, and you say, okay, I sent my information. How do I know you got it, right? You can check in with an OGS advisor, but I would say kindly don't slam us with that question because we have a lot of work going on. Generally, if you have submitted your information and nobody reached out to you, then you may rely on, okay, this is going well. Typically, you will get an outreach if there is something missing or if something was not done correctly. We recognize that the CVIS system requires you to send them the information and they typically don't get back to you, but I think you can trust if you have submitted it accurately and in a timely fashion, it's reached them. And you would need to trust that that reached them accurately. Other questions, Monica?
I think then there are just general questions about travel and OPT and the STEM process, which I think you've already addressed, that we have resources on our website that students can look to for very detailed information.
Okay, thank you. I'll hold on to the thought about travel while on OPT. Let me go through the slides, and if we have a few minutes, I'll gladly address traveling while on OPT.
Thank you.
May we go to the next slide, please? All right, so do's, we talked about do's. Here are the do nots that I promised to talk about. Do not forget to report employment or practical training. It's not an option, folks. This is a reporting requirement. You have the benefit of your F1 visa, and with every benefit comes a responsibility, right? So it's just not acceptable to the federal government when a student says, well, I'm sorry, I forgot. That's just not optional. So would it be, so think about, right, there is a responsibility in any transactional arrangement, and with your OPT and STEM extension, the government has made it very clear to you, your school has informed to you that you have a reporting obligation. I forgot is not an acceptable reason. So I strongly caution you to keep an eye on the reporting requirements. I remind you kindly that your reporting should be both timely and accurate, and that it's just not an option. You need to do it. Please, again, do not miss emails from Northeastern. Check back periodically, make sure you have an alert. Again, the communication is sent to you. With a university, the university email is the official means of communication to students. It is then your responsibility to have read it, right? Just as when you get mail, it's your responsibility to open it and read it. So I remind you that you should not forget to open or check your Northeastern University emails. I strongly urge you not to lose or misplace that EAD. I hope you know that any EAD that is lost, you have to pay the I-765 fee all over again and request a replacement. And from my personal experience working on a couple of cases, I will tell you, I have seen that when an EAD replacement was requested, lots of questions were asked. Just don't put yourself in that situation. Your EAD, you only have to show it one time to the Human Resources Office when you start a job. After that, put it away in a safe place with your passport. Same thing with your Social Security card. You should not be showing or giving your Social Security card to anybody. Put it away in a safe place. Your doctor's office does not need your Social Security number. You know what? Anytime you go somewhere and they ask you for your Social Security number, ask them, do you really need it, or is an alternate way of identification acceptable to you? You'll find how many places can work with your date of birth or other information. Don't hesitate to ask. If they need it, they will say, no, we have to have it. It's not an option. But you do not send copies of your Social Security card over email to anybody. Protect yourself, protect your identity. If you plan to travel outside the United States, first of all, please remember the travel signature is required to come back to the US, not to leave. I have students emailing and saying, I'm leaving tomorrow, I need my travel signature today. No, you do not. First of all, you know that with COVID accommodations, we are able to email your I-20 to you. Second, submit the travel signature request and rest assured that it will be done and sent to you within our reasonable processing timelines. You need a travel signature when you plan to come back to the United States. Also, go to the OGS website and click on the traveling international travel page. You will see that OGS now is able to provide you with a travel support letter. And we are asking you to kindly register with the Northeastern Travel Registry so that our police department is aware of your intended return to the United States. And if there are any questions, the university is able to support you. Please plan your travel reasonably. When you are on OPT, you know that carrying a letter from your employer is also a very good idea. Keep in mind that you also have to look at travel restrictions and CDC restrictions as far as the COVID pandemic is concerned. These are evolving pieces that OGS does not control. Keep an eye on your passport validity. Keep an eye on your visa expiration date. Any of those expire, you will need those to be renewed. This is a time when I urge you to think very carefully before engaging in international travel. I remind you that any travel and re-entry to the United States is at the discretion of the Customs and Border Protection Officer at the airport, the port of entry where you will return. The university and OGS will have given you the travel signature on your I-20 and the travel support letter. After that, it will be up to the CBP officer to talk to you and to determine your eligibility to enter the United States. Did you know your visa is only a stamp in your passport that says you can arrive at the airport and ask the CBP officer to let you in? It is not a guarantee. I can never guarantee you, OGS can never guarantee you that you can re-enter at any point. We can tell you that everything is in order and that you have a good case to come back, but after that, it's up to the CBP officer. I don't mean to scare you. I'm just letting you know the reality of how complex all of it is, right? So again, You need to have all your paperwork. You need to make sure that you took care of your travel requirements. You stand in front of a CBP officer and say, I forgot to get a travel signature. Not a good idea. So again, make sure that you follow through with all of your responsibilities while you are on OPT. Don't forget, while on OPT and on STEM extension, you are still on an F1 visa. It is not a work visa. It is not an OPT visa. If anybody says that, please correct them, because those are different things and there is no such thing as an OPT visa. You need to use the terminology correctly. It will help you. Also, if you are on a valid OPT and you leave the United States and then you come back on a tourist visa, your OPT just ended. Now you're a tourist. So be very careful. I know when you arrive at the airport, again, you have anxiety when you're talking to the customs officer. If you have 2 visa stamps in your passport, a valid tourist and a valid F1, make sure you opened to the right page. And when the officer is talking to you and lets you in, pay attention. I know you want to leave quickly. I have been there. I was an F1 student myself. Stop for 2 seconds, look at your paperwork, make sure you enter the country in the appropriate visa status, because once there is a mistake, rectifying those are extremely challenging. And again, it's your responsibility to make sure you showed the right paperwork and you enter in the correct visa status. Jigisha, anything to add there?
No, I was just going to add, when you mentioned earlier, while we want you to be prepared and informed, we know the way the world works, that sometimes things are going to happen, right? And you're going to be in a situation where you just remember after the fact and you need help. And so I would say, again, by registering your travel, it's the easiest way for us to respond and support. It also gives us the information, because sometimes on entry, if there are questions from CBP, an officer, we do have an escalation protocol where they will contact the university to verify information. And so it just helps us to make sure that, you've provided OGS all of the updated information, you've registered your travel so that we have it and we can quickly verify, because that also helps to quickly determine by the officer that you are eligible to enter in F1 status. I just wanted to highlight that, as well as, we have invested in ways of trying to support. And while it is discretionary for a CBP officer to contact the university, they often do, especially at Boston Logan and airports near our campuses where we've built that relationship, and the major U.S. International airports as well.
So Jigisha, just to make sure, for clarity reasons, is registering myself with the travel registry a substitute for the travel signature? Is it okay if I don't do the travel signature then?
No, it's not. No. We definitely want to make sure that, that you have met all of your responsibilities and requirements. Obtaining the travel signature is important and it should be timely done. I just wanted to raise that another way, if you are in a situation where, something has happened or something has gone wrong and you just, you realize it after the fact, then, make sure that your information with OGS and by registering your travel, that you're allowing us to help you and support you if we're able to.
Thank you. Maybe go to the next slide, please. Okay, I just want to make sure that I draw your attention to some critical alerts before we talk about more questions and answers. SEVP is terminating the CVIS records of any student who fails to report employment. So again, please make sure that you don't forget. Please make sure that you are using the SEVP portal to report your OPT engagement with a legitimate employer. Please make sure that all information you report there is accurate. If any officer, government agency contacts you, kindly inform OGS immediately. We will assist you with any inquiry or concerns that you may have. You can also reach out to us if you feel that it is not a legitimate inquiry. I encourage you to even double check, get the officer's name, get their phone number or business card, and have a respectful conversation, and then let us know if there is any concern. But please notify us right away if you have received any outreach from any government agency or officer. And again, you know, if your instincts tell you that something is a scam, then it probably is. Use your common sense and your gut instinct when you are engaging with employers or any outreach or interviews and things like that. Always feel free to double check and to ask questions to verify, right? Trust but verify, whoever it may be, whether it's an employer or a government agency. So your safety, your security, you know, is important. And whatever the situation may be, we strongly encourage you to be thoughtful and to ask questions and reach out to OGS if you have any concerns. Jigisha, would you like to add anything here?
No, just want to say, you know, thank you. And you know, we do want to make sure that we're available. We're here to support you. You know, we want to make sure that you're informed. And sometimes it's better to be thoughtful and careful and mindful of what we're doing, and in particular not rush, especially when it can be you know, really impactful, because you want to make sure that there is no concern about your F1 status and maintenance of status. In the climate that we're in today, you know, compliance is really important. So we want to make sure that, you know, we're providing information that's helpful to you as well.
Thank you very much. While we move to the next slide that has the resources on it, Monica, were there other questions?
There's a STEM question. If you can clarify what a student might need to focus on when they're submitting their validation reports and evaluation reports.
I think they need to follow the prompts, right? The information that is required is all there on that form. So I think it needs to be truthful. It needs to demonstrate that the employment is achieving the academic goals, right? Here's what you learned in school. Here's how you're applying it in the workplace. I think really simple, common sense approach, simply making the connections between the employment or the practical training opportunity to the academic component. OGS's role, the government requires us to simply make sure the I-983 is complete. We do not verify, right? We are not experts. So let me give you an example. If somebody is working in computer engineering, we are not experts in either the industry or the academic side of that work. So that is not what is expected of the DSO, the designated school official. The designated school official has to make sure that the employer and the individual on the STEM extension completed all the paperwork and that it is okay to submit. For now, we are required to keep it on file at OGS. In the future, if the government should require you to send it over to them, on a personal note, I would probably be happy because I think the oversight is a different piece there, right? So you need to report that to the government. That's why you are reporting your employment information to the government, so that then they can exercise their oversight. I hope that's clear and that's helpful. Other questions?
There are a lot of questions about travel and travel during OPT, what is required to carry, and then in particular, if they have a pending H-1 application, things to be concerned about.
So with a pending H1, I will tell you to kindly consult with an immigration attorney, because that is a whole other, there is a bridge, right? You're bridging from one visa status to another, and I strongly invite you to talk to an attorney. Generally with the H1B, the employer may have an attorney as well. So the basic information with traveling is to carry as much information as possible. Make sure all your documents are valid, as I previously mentioned. Make sure you still have your travel signature, carry the EAD, make sure you have the I-20 and copies of previous I-20s. Make sure you have a letter from the employer showing that you are engaged in a valid practical training opportunity, and that you have a valid visa in your passport, right? Because if a student travels while they are on OPT and have an expired visa, that visa needs to be renewed. And then you do need to go for the visa appointment with the US consulate. They may waive it, but they may want you to come in. It depends. These are practices that we call are sometimes post-specific. The post is the city in which you go to the US consulate to renew your visa. And depending on various factors, anybody renewing the F1 visa may be eligible for a waiver, or they may be required to present themselves for an interview with a consular officer, who then determines that this is something that they are willing to approve, right? Again, OGS or any institution cannot guarantee the outcome of that visa interview. So you have to engage in travel and employment opportunities and reporting requirements very carefully and very thoughtfully, because these are complex, these are individual and situation specific. They are not things that you can overgeneralize, right? I'll give you a joke. My father came to this country many years ago, and he always says, oh yes, I came, I was able to do this. You should be able to do this too. Yeah, Dad, not so much. Things change, and while a previous experience is true for that individual, that is not necessarily true for you right now in the moment in your specific situation. So do exercise great caution. Do exercise good judgment. Do exercise a critical lens on everything that you hear, and make sure that you also exercise very good, sensible judgment. And please, I cannot emphasize to you enough how critical it is for you to continue maintaining your reporting obligations while you are on OPT and on STEM extensions. We are offering another webinar next week, same day, same time. We hope not to have too many technical issues. I also am hopeful that we will post this webinar recording on our website, so feel free to continue engaging with us. My thanks to Jigisha Patel and to Monica Rodriguez for your time and contributions this afternoon. Thank you, everyone, and good luck. Please continue to be safe. Thank you.